Another volunteer, would somebody help me? Okay. If you hold on to those. So, brothers and sisters, this is a very important moment in the life of, in the worship service when we bring our gifts of money to God, and we do this every week, and usually this is at the door for you to put your gifts of money into. But this morning we thought we'd do it a little bit more publicly, just so we could really find out who's giving what to God. Put it under a little bit more scrutiny. So fortunately we've got two people here who are ready to give us some money. And I think this man over here looks as though he might be the kind of person that we're all looking for. So do you want to... There, that would be lovely if you could put that one in. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Can we get some sound effects here? I do believe this is a £20 note. Fantastic. Well, maybe we could put a plaque up with your name on it over there, because you've given so much money to... Oh, have you got some money to give as well? Okay, let's see. This is great. Maybe we'll do even better this time. Oh, I heard the sound of... Oh, that didn't sound like paper going in there, did it? It sounded like coins. Fantastic. 15p. He gave us £20. She's only given us 15p. But wait a minute. Shall we have another look? Do you have any money left? Do you want to hold it up? Still got £10 in his pocket. That's quite impressive. So you can go out and buy lunch for the family afterwards. And do you have anything there? No. Nothing at all. Nothing at all left. Pockets are empty. This is the story that Jesus told, that we read about Jesus in the Gospels. This is a story we read this morning. And I think it's a really interesting story because it tells us something about how Jesus does maths and arithmetic. And Jesus is... Oh, you got one more, have you? Well, let's have that as well. We've now got 17p from this very generous donor over here. So thank you for that. When Jesus does sums, he doesn't just add up and find out who's given the most. When Jesus does sums, he also looks at what people still have in their wallets, at what people still keep. And so he tells this story, and these people are coming in and they're waving their loads of money around, and everybody can see it, and then they drop it in the collection plate and they go on and think, well, everybody will be very impressed with me. And then he says, a poor widow came and she dropped in 2 copper coins. But then he said, that was all she had. So here's the question that he asked everybody. Who gave the most? Was it this wealthy young man over here who put in the £20? Or was it this poor young lady down here who gave everything she had? And as a percentage, what did she give if she put in everything she had? 100%. Okay, and here's a tricky one. Let's hope there are some people who are good. So I think this young man had £30 and he put in 20. So who gave the most? And so as the song said, Jesus shows us that God doesn't just look at what we give. God looks at what we keep. And that's interesting because if you go to lots of church buildings, you'll find there are plaques on the wall sometimes, or there are names on the outside. Here, Finn's place is not named after the person who gave you £1 million. I don't think it's named after something very different. But some churches have that. But it's interesting that the person whose name there, in God's eyes, may not be the person who gave the most. So on this Sunday in the middle of COP, what does this say to us, this wonderful story that Jesus tells about the widow and the money she gave? Well, I think there's two things. And I think one of them is that even when we can only do small things, we might think that what we're called to do in response to climate change isn't very much, but perhaps in the way that God thinks about it, our job is to bring what we have and do what we have, and God will use that. So even if we can only go on a march and carry a banner, we may not be a politician, we may not have lots of power, but if we can go onto the street with lots of other people, maybe that's the small thing we do. Or if we're not able to go on a march, then maybe we can sit at home and pray, and that's the small thing that we can do. But that is something that's very important in the eyes of God. But here's the other thing I think that this tells us. There may be some very wealthy and powerful people in the world who do enormous things in response to climate change. Maybe they buy 20,000 acres of Scotland and plant, 10,000 trees or 100,000 trees. And that seems like a huge thing. But actually, if you went and looked at the resources they had, it has hardly dented what's in their bank account to do that. And so I think this is a story about us all being held accountable. I think it's a story about our nation, about our country being held accountable. I think it's a story about all the nations of the world being held accountable. And that God doesn't just look at who's done the most in a superficial way, but God looks at what it costs people. And also the fact that some people can do an awful lot more than they're doing at the moment, and they're called to do a lot more. So this is a really challenging story, I think, for all of us. That God looks not just at what we give, but at what we keep, and that we're accountable to God for that. And I think it's maybe the perfect story for the middle of COP in Glasgow as we think about what people are bringing to the table. I was talking to a woman who's a climate scientist, and I did an interview with her. And she was in America, and I was here. She's called Catherine Hayhoe, and she's a very famous climate scientist. She works for the Nature Conservancy. And she said, how should you think about COP? She said, well, you should think about COP a bit like a church potluck supper. And here's the table. And what do you bring to put on the table? He said, that's what's going on at the minute down by the River Clyde, is all these countries are bringing, and some of them, he says, are bringing a big fresh bowl of salad and a big beautiful smelling apple pie, and other people are bringing maybe a mouldy fish finger from the back of the freezer, was what she said. But the issue is COP is where people have to bring and put their offerings on the table and say, this is what we've brought to God. And actually, maybe if all you have is a mouldy fish finger, then you've given more than the person who brings the big thing. But this story reminds us to think about what we give and about what we keep. And to this story, in a few moments, we add another story, which is the story about Jesus giving everything for us out of love. Thank you very much. Thank you for your help there. We might have to reclaim that £10 from you, because there's a gentleman behind who may be going short this week if we don't. But thank you so much for your help, and thank you for your help.